Hi there, for those just joining, we are going to get started in a few minutes. We have a really exciting show for you today. And I'll be back in 30 seconds. Hi there, it's been a busy week and a really full week here. And we're going to get started. We're really happy to have a guest, the co-founder of Salesfloor is going to join us towards the end. And it's a real treat. But let's get started because we know that we're all on busy schedules these days, and certainly want to be respectful of your time. So this is our I guess our fifth on the front line. We're focusing on the human touch, and the reason why we're doing that, it's the single most important factor that we've seen in retail. Retail store tours, from last week you asked what we do, so this is a response to what your question from last week. So we operate physical and virtual tours in 20 cities around the world. We have 15 programs in New York. We do virtual and physical tours, and we have the largest store database in the world with about 28,000 photos and videos. It gives us a little bit of a unique perspective as far as COVID-19 goes, because we actually have real connections. We know what's going on. So we're doing currently workshops, keynotes, and we're doing marketplace modeling because the market is different, as we'll see. We decided, we were on the phone with our Chinese partners yesterday, and we're going to be launching the World Retail Forum in a couple of weeks. It's going to be 3 hours. It's going to be focused straight on, it's no blah, blah, blah. It's straight to the best practices for department stores, shopping centers, convenience stores, restaurants, and grocery stores. And we're partnering with the CCFA, which is the largest restaurant and retail association in the world in China. We developed the Consumer Engagement Index, and so that actually measures performance. We've actually modeled these 7 factors, and they're directly correlated. Today, we're going to be talking about the human touch and technology, which Salesfloor and which Ben have spent the last few years really perfecting. But we're going to move on to brand story, employee training, and then next week we'll talk about change, which is one of the 7 habits, and also unique value propositions. So let's talk about the human touch, because we are these 5 census supercomputers, and we really do well with human interaction. But we also do really well with tech. And this is, if you haven't been to Sephora, this is a treat, because the people are so well trained, the technology is so effective, and it just works. And including, this is the Nike store in New York, the flagship on 5th Avenue. And so even the store is an app, and the store is technology, but the store is also the human touch. One of my favorite examples is Microsoft, and Kwame, who is the person who moves so fast that he's blurry, but Kwame is at the Microsoft store on 5th Avenue. Microsoft, Apple hires people based on kindness and evaluates them on empathy. Microsoft has a different approach. They hire stand-up comics who are really terrifically engaging. Camp, which is a store for kids, actually hires actors. Technology and touch can be really extraordinarily well explained here at Beta, which is a store that was started by the Google Nest team. But the human touch is an emotional touch, and there's nothing more symbolic than that blue box from Tiffany and the story behind it. And who can resist Audrey Hepburn? And Tiffany beautifully tells the story Breakfast at Tiffany, and that is the $10 million or probably priceless necklace that she wore during that time. It's only been taken out basically 5 times since 1957. And then Brooks Brothers, which is the most successful retailer probably on earth, has an acronym which is called CARE, C-A-R-E, and their brand story and their impact on customers is really second to none, and so is their sales. So every week on the Frontline, we are talking about practical information that will help all of us succeed in the marketplace. So we don't have a poll this week, but Chelsea on the call will be sending out a survey. Please let us know what the topics are for you, because we have a huge network, and Ben has graciously agreed to provide some time this morning to explain his solution, and that's a fruit of the network. So to give you updates, this is Atlanta. This is Atlanta, Georgia at about 4:15 last night. You might look at that and say, boy, there aren't many people in the restaurant. Or you could look at it and say, there are people in that restaurant. So I look at it the second way, which is there are people in that restaurant. And then if we look to Singapore back in March, it was about the same, maybe greater density. So the normal, what we can expect is that we will get about 30% to 40% of people initially coming back to restaurants, and that will increase progressively. Last week, we reported on the Shanghai Double Five Festival. For those of you not on the call, Double Five is a 55-day event, and the municipality of Shanghai has opened 40,000 parking spaces and provided 10 billion vouchers. And in the first day, they did 2.2 billion in sales. So there is a model for success, and hopefully you can see my screen here. We're opening up New York, which is good news, at the end of June, and we're going to be providing smaller groups, 5 versus 15. We're providing N95 masks and also gloves if you need them. So I want to talk about the human touch, because the human touch has always been important. In fact, that person on the couch is using an early version of Salesforce in 1941, before Ben was even born. So she is actually the founder of Salesforce. I'm just kidding. Inflection points are a little bit sort of surprising things. And when they happen, they're always kind of changing things quickly. Here's one in the last 70 years called Pearl Harbor. And although if we were talking on December 8th, 1941, we might be pessimistic. But if we were talking 4 years later, the United States was producing 8 aircraft carriers a month and 42 billion rounds of ammunition. So a lot of industries were born out of that inflection point. More recently, a very personal thing, because we lost so many friends and neighbors, was the 9/11. And we'll focus on that, because the 9/11 event changed things. It changed the way that we take off our clothes before we go to an airplane. We go through electric sensors now. We get even scanned more greatly. So there are a lot of parallels between that inflection point and this inflection point. But this inflection point has particular challenges. In fact, this one I call a light switch, because one day life was one way, and next day we're sitting maybe complete strangers on a Zoom call. So I think you'll agree. It happened at lightning speed. In other words, World War II and 9/11. 9/11 was considered a New York event, a US event. This is a global event. And so, and when you look at Shanghai, and this is in January, this is how it is, but this could be New York City. And so what is our new way of operating? Well, we're screening, and we're screening people, we're screening their temperatures. We're also testing. So go to Walmart, get a snow shovel, get a new pair of pants, and get a COVID-19 test in the parking lot, which is what you're seeing here. We're also doing things like covering our faces, which is a challenge, because underneath that mask is probably a smile, although you can actually tell a smile from someone's eyes. We're also human beings who've been very successful for the last 200,000 years, working together, are now apart. In fact, 6 feet apart. Now, for those of you who like colors, there are many colors that you can choose from today. You can choose orange or blue or squares. So it is fun, but maybe not so much. In terms of distancing, food shopping used to be a lot of fun. It probably still is, but I guess don't ask for the person in line for a recipe because you probably won't hear them. So here's some good news. And I believe that understanding the facts will produce good results. So this is Westfield, New Jersey, and this is Sunday. And Turning Point, which is one of the local diners, had a record day. And they had a record day because they couldn't keep up with the orders for Mother's Day. And that was true throughout the entire day. For those outside the US, Mother's Day is a sort of a US type of a holiday. Being very adaptable. In fact, maybe many of you are exercising right now when you're on this video call. We can't see you. Maybe 18% of you are, because that's what the average is. 21% of consumers have ordered groceries, and many are picking up at store. In fact, for those of you who are rock fans, maybe 20% of you watched that concert with the Rolling Stones not too long ago. Or maybe you've had a virtual party. We certainly have had virtual parties with our kids, and it's a lot of fun. More fun to be together, but there you have it. And then what's good is that some of these things are just not reported, but 53% of younger Americans are ordering from their favorite restaurants. From what we see in the marketplace, restaurants are getting by. I would say they're having a bang up year, but they're getting by. So here's some of the news from around the world that we thought we wanted to share with you. We also have, you've seen versions of this. So when you go into a store and you see the policy about that, and then the guideline about that, and then appreciation hours and maximum capacity, it's sort of, it's kind of telling you, shop here, but don't interact with anyone, which is a little bit contrary to how, how we operate as a human being. So we're getting through here very quickly, and which will actually give us a fair amount of time with Ben. But American Dream is the largest shopping center in the Western Hemisphere. For those of you who don't know it, that is the largest pool that's ready to open. It's got capacity for thousands of people. It's got the world's tallest and I believe the fastest water slide. Additionally, what it has an indoor ski slope, so you can go skiing any time of the year. It has an amusement park with 32 rides rather. And prior to this, it had 400 stores and restaurants. So the ratio of stores to experiences was 55% experience and 45% stores. What American Dream is doing is they're going up to around 72% experience, and the balance, the 28%, is stores. So it's still a massive. Someone else had the same idea. So no ideas are new. That person was Walt Disney. And in 1957, Walt Disney opened Disneyland. And believe it or not, Disneyland was around the same ratio, about 75% amusements and 25% restaurants. So the physical part of the experience is retail. We talked, if you missed our talk last week, that we see that about 25% of retail in the future will include some form of medical. So mindfulness, getting your MRI, getting your annual checkup, getting your COVID-19 test is all part of it. So I wanted to introduce Ben in just a couple of slides, but also before that, share some of the things that some of the behaviors that Ben will be talking about. This is basically, it's called Shops, S-H-O-P, S-H-O-P-S. And what this is, if for those of you on the US, it's like QVC, which is a shopping channel where the Shop's team goes into a boutique. In this case, this is Dreams in Soho on Worcester Street. And they are live streaming, as that young lady is talking about, that dress, which she designed, to 10,000 consumers in China who are bidding on that dress because there may be only 10 or so dresses like that. So the idea of, of a Zoom call at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday with people from around the world, but the same idea of Zooming to get that dress for your wedding or for your job interview or for a date or some, it's there. I mean, this technology exists, and this is to some degree the future of shopping. When we get to human-powered tools, and Ben has some wonderful statistics on this, this is where Salesforce comes in. And for many, many years, Salesforce has been really perfecting the engagement. The prior CRM tools, and I joke with Ben when I first met him, they were the sales associate sort of punitive tools, in that those tools, you had to follow corporate, you had to ask for people's names. It was the last thing anyone would want to experience as a consumer, and certainly the last thing that a sales associate would ever do. So thus the early CRMs didn't work. But Ben and his company have come up with probably, one of the most important sales tools at this particular point, because it truly empowers the sales associate in a personal way, perfectly combining the human touch and technology. And Ben, you could just give me direction as to how to change your slides here.
No problem. Thank you very much, Daniel. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time talking about not only what Salesforce does, but also what we're seeing in the market. So maybe I'll start here quickly by just letting everyone know what Salesforce does. We're a clienteling and assisted selling solution used by a number of American, Canadian, and European retailers to connect with their customers. And what we do is connect associates with customers in personalized ways using email, text message, and several web functionalities that essentially give the associate the ability to sell to their customer online. So as you can imagine, COVID-19 and this pandemic has kind of recreated the need for a store associate to be able to use digital and web tools to be able to engage their customers. So what I'll tell you about today is what we're seeing. And I think it's positive. And I think it's, from my perspective, I have a very optimistic view of what's going to happen in the next few months, because as stores reopen, there's definitely a new normal. But as you can see on the statistic on the screen, even in the darkest of days during the pandemic, we launched a luxury retailer, a major luxury retailer. And where we normally take a month or two to hit that first $1 million in sales, they did it in 18 days. And they didn't just do it because they had more traffic on their website. They did it because their associates were highly engaged and looking for a way to connect with their customers. So, you can do the math, 18 days and $1 million gets you about $20 to $21 million in sales per year. And if you think about what that could look like when stores start to reopen, that number obviously becomes much bigger. So this was a really nice piece of news for us last month to look at how fast this was achieved compared to the average retailer.
And would you mind if I
on the next?
So
sure, go ahead.
The question I have, Ben, is in getting them up to speed. What was the process? What was the timeline from the time that they first introduced the tool to when they were actually functioning and writing business?
I mean, training for us happens on the same day that the entire program goes live. We're strong believers here at Salesforce in when you're getting trained to use this technology, you're officially open for business. But the ramp up period with the retailers, we set up and implemented the whole thing in about 6 weeks for them. And it was, really about making sure that from a training perspective, we pivoted our strategy knowing that everyone was working from home, which was something that was rather new for, I think, everyone involved in the project. And as you can imagine, making an interactive training session with a new piece of technology through Zoom or whatever we use, it was challenging, but I think it went off without a hitch.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
So here, on the next slide, I mean, what we're seeing in the research, this is not sales floor anymore, but, store closures have definitely impacted the way people shop. It's no secret to everybody on the call, whether you're in North America or beyond. We know that consumers are spending a lot more time online than they were before. And what the research that we're reading from companies like McKinsey and other research companies is showing that customers are not just going to turn back on and come back to store. There's going to be a level of comfort and discomfort with this new normal, and it's going to result in depressed in-store shopping traffic. And the majority of customers do see themselves shopping more online than they did before the pandemic began. So what that means is that there is an opportunity for retailers to make sure that their store associates have the right functionality and the right tools to meet the customer's eye line. And, and that eye line being the expectations that they have around their customer experience in a post-COVID world. And I think what that looks like is using digital as a means to deliver the experience in a way that maybe you didn't before. So I think the word digital transformation is getting thrown around a lot these days. But I think everyone is capable of taking baby steps and walking before they run, giving your associates an email address or a clienteling solution, be it Salesforce or whatever else. I think that our stores need to be empowered to work in a new way as we come out of this pandemic.
I agree, Ben. Some of the data from China, I'm not necessarily sure if I agree with these numbers. I know they're not your numbers, but the impact on China was around 20 weeks, and the impact on North America is about 7. So there's a bit of a difference. I think we will be bouncing back a little bit more vigorously. Anyway, I think really good points.
Thank you. No, I agree with you that, the data that we are looking at is not the same data that, the Asian consumer base is dealing with. They are further ahead than us. So I do hope that these numbers change in the right direction, as you're saying. Here's an interesting statistic that, we pulled out last week. A lot of retail operators are asking themselves, well, what does an operation actually look like in this new normal? And when you boil it down, whether you look at sales per hour or the number of customers that you could serve on a daily or weekly basis, those are really the metrics that we're going to base our labor calculations on and how retailers are going to react. So when you think about what's happened over the past few months where stores have actually been closed and the only way to serve customers is through an online experience, what we did at Salesforce was we took an average of all of our retailers across all categories, and we came up with the number of customers that they are actually serving on a weekly basis on a per user average. And that number was 94 customers. So if you think about what that could look like, and just to give you a benchmark, actually, 94 compares to about 45 or 50 pre-COVID. And so if you look at this example of, Dora, the associate from Lilly Pulitzer, sending her customer an email, making a product recommendation, this is the same kind of experience or interaction a customer would come to expect in a store during normal times. But as we reach that new normal, I think retailers are asking themselves, how many customers do each of my associates have to serve? And what does my labor calculation need to adjust to based on the fact that a lot more of this is going to happen online?
Right. For those who are listening, I discovered Ben a couple of years ago. Our company reviews thousands and thousands of companies every year. So we picked Ben. This is not a sales opportunity. This is not a sales pitch. But what I liked about this particular comment, and then you'll see Ben has some other slides to show you, but everything is multimodal. So, it could be an email template. It could be text. So it really depends. Whatever your communication style is, Salesforce has addressed it.
Right. Yeah. We have the email that you saw before. It could be transmitted by text. It could be transmitted by live chat. An associate can go on social media and, wake up their audience there. I really like the QVC example that you gave before, because if you think about the store associate, that needs to evolve, they might not have thousands or millions of an audience the way, shops have in Asia, but they have micro versions of that. And I think that giving them the tools to actually leverage their local audience be it their neighbors, their community. You know, everybody knows that person next door that works in a certain industry. And when you're looking, you know, this example on the screen is, I really like to give it because it's a very specialized area. You know, when you think about Relax the Back, they have 100 locations in America. They specifically focus on people who are probably a little bit older in demographic and with a very small subset of products. It's all about products for your back, your posterior, you know, area, be it mattresses or chairs or whatever. And these customers, they actually, not only is COVID-19 preventing them from entering the store, but the condition that their back is in is preventing them from leaving their house. So when we saw, you know, we onboarded them about 1.5 years ago, and when COVID hit, what was really interesting was to see that the statistics that we see in the younger brands that we work with, you know, the more, call it luxury, call it more forward-thinking, ready-to-wear type retailers, when you see text message, live chat, and digital engagement with those customers, and you assume those demographics, they paired right up to Relax the Back. So what we're saying here is that even an older demographic who's looking for a very narrow subset of products are still engaging through digital and need these tools to figure out what it is they're going to buy and how. Some of these chairs go for $5,000, you know, because of how specialized they are. So you better well bet on the fact that your associate needs to be there, even if that customer is shopping online.
The messaging is so perfect.
And this is what it looks like, just to give you an example. Again, I don't want this to be any kind of sales pitch, but when you do visit a website that we're implemented on, you know, you can connect with a local store associate, whether you know them or not. And going back to Daniel's great example before, the department store in the 40s or 50s, you know, that associate that's holding that book, writing things down about what the customer wants, this is kind of our digital version of that. And when you look at what's happened in this pandemic and you compare it to the times that we had leading up to it, we're seeing a 300% increase in the amount of actual requests that customers are asking for. So, you know, traffic is definitely up. I can't say that traffic is up 3 times where it was before, but I can tell you that the level of engagement that the customer actually has with their store online, not just through e-commerce, but through actual clienteling conversations, that number has tripled, which creates triple the selling opportunities. And I think it was on the next slide where we show the actual interaction. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I actually discovered Sales Floor. We were doing a curation of Saks men's store in Brookfield Place by the World Trade Center. And what I loved about it, Matt Jones, who was the manager there, said that the sales associate basically they're the hub. They're controlling all the communications. They're controlling, you know, if something came in, there's a nice jacket, nice blouse, nice pair of shoes, and they're very thoughtfully, you know, curating using the technology to provide that personal touch that's so critical.
Absolutely. So this is what it actually looks like when the customer is live chatting with an associate. Obviously, it's illustrative, but again, you see that 310% increase in interactions. That's the actual impact of what the pandemic is doing. It's driving the number of interactions up, but you know, so significantly. Baby retailers are actually, I think, one of the big beneficiaries of this situation. The demand for their products have not gone down. Whether you're talking about diapers and essentials, or you're a new parent needing a stroller, the need for, you know, a digital connection with the store, it's not a nice to have for them. It's actually a necessity. So we work with Bye Bye Baby, and you know, whether they're registry advisors who have baby registry expertise or helping parents to be, or the customer who's actually postpartum and actually has a baby, new baby, needs new product, they need help. And, you know, I've got kids of my own, and I know many of us on the call probably do too. And we all remember what it was like to be buying these products for the first time and truly needing the help of someone at the other end of the experience helping us. So with COVID in the picture, we definitely see an increase in sales and conversion rates, but it's all being driven by that expertise that store associate is lending to the process. And then here's just a quick example of what it looks like, you know, as a store associate who works for one of our department stores. They actually have their own version of the website. They have what we call a sales floor associate storefront. And this is where they can actually engage their local community, their local audience, very similar to the Shop Shops idea. And by coming to like Saks.com/Jennifer here, I can actually shop the shoes that she recommends. Jennifer can share products on Instagram, and she can monetize her relationships through online, through digital. And what we see is that the traffic through this channel has actually quadrupled during COVID-19, during the pandemic.
It's so well done. And then you got the Mother's Day sequence here, which I think is so well timed. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of retailers use our data and actually create their own activations using their associates. And this is a super recent example that we actually didn't even know about until it went live, which is obviously a nice surprise on a Sunday morning Mother's Day. This was Holt Renfrew in Canada, one of the leading luxury retailers who, used their leading associates, some of their top performing associates, and actually highlighted them and what they had as top picks during Mother's Day, and obviously linked back to ways that you could shop with them. So really bringing the associate to life in their digital experience at a time when I think it's really important. So those are some good examples. Like I said, we're really optimistic at Salesfloor about what the future of retail looks like. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, Daniel, that you might have or so on.
We're going to take questions in a second. So we covered today the human touch and use of technology. Ben's terrific. Next week, it's going to be change and unique value propositions. The week after that, brand story and employee training. Again, mark your calendar for the World Retail Forum, where we're going to be reviewing best practices. And so we do have a couple of minutes here for questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, or if you want to ask questions afterwards, we're happy to get back to you on this. But it's just the great thing about I've been following Ben for at least 2 years now, and the great thing about the product is that it's we're at a situation where your product is actually nearly perfectly aligned to the market need at this point. So we don't have any questions, at least none that I can see at least. So what we'll do is we'll wrap this up. And then if you have any other questions, please reach out to us at hello@retailstoretours.com. And Ben, thank you very much for your time here. And we'll see you next week at 9 o'clock East Coast time for On the Frontline. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Take care. Bye-bye.